Hey everyone, and welcome to SkillCapped. In this guide, we'll be ranking the best and worst guns as of the brand new patch 2.0. Now, this just won't be one person's opinion, but instead based on pros we've consulted with, trends in the highest ranks of solo queue, and gun choices from tournament statistics. And I promise, things have changed quite a bit, and I'm sure you'll be surprised by a few of the picks on our list. At the same time, this tier list will provide you with the most accurate snapshot of the current weapon meta in Valorant. So enough hype, let's jump straight into it. We'll be starting from the weakest guns in the D tier first, with the overpowered and S tier weapons last, so make sure to watch until the end. So starting off at the very bottom in D tier, we have one single weapon, and it's, you guessed it, the Guardian. This probably doesn't come as a surprise to many of you, as the Guardian has been having tremendous balance issues ever since it was released, always considered to be quite weak. Now, don't get us wrong, the Guardian itself can be a strong weapon with its one-shot headshots at all ranges. However, the biggest issue is its price point at 2,400 credits, which is a very awkward spot to be in. For only 500 more credits, you can afford a rifle such as a Vandal or Phantom, which are just way stronger. But the real problems come when you look at the cheaper options. For only 1,000 credits, you can get a Stinger, which is way more powerful in close range fights. And if you really just want to go for one-shot headshots at long ranges, well then just get a Marshal for only 1,100 credits. I mean, you also have the other close to mid-range one-shot headshot options in the Sheriff for 800 credits. I think you're starting to get the point. The Guardian is just way too expensive for what you get from it, the one-shot headshot potential at all ranges, and this is why we can confidently place it in the D tier. And before we jump into the C tier, remember what you find here on our YouTube channel is just a taste of the hyper improvement system on our website, SkillCapped.com. It's there, you'll not only find over 700 premium Valorant guides, but we also have an expanding library of live Smurf commentaries, a feature no one else offers. These are by some of the top Valorant players, breaking down how you too can climb out of every rank in Valorant, ranging from Iron to Diamond. All of this can be unlocked with no risk with our rank improvement guarantee, so click the link in the description below, head to skillcapped.com, and get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, so starting at the bottom of the C tier, we have the Shorty. Now, the Shorty used to be insanely overpowered prior to its nerf. This nerf on patch 1.07 had the fall-off range reduced from 9 meters to 7, and the headshot multiplier reduced from ×3 to ×2. This was massive, as what ended up happening is that the Shorty no longer could consistently one-shot enemies, even at relatively close ranges. To put this into perspective, if you wanted to one-shot someone to the body, you need to land 13 of the 15 bullets from the Shorty within 7 meters. Before, you could make up for this large requirement by it having a further range damage drop-off and a higher headshot multiplier, but now you really need to be extremely close and accurate in order to one-shot your opponent. Considering the classic pistol, which you get for free, can kill an enemy with 2 headshots within 30 meters, even if they have full armor, and has a right-click burst option, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to spend 200 credits on a Shorty when you can just sit on the classic pistol. Now, above the Shorty in the C tier is the Marshal. Going to be honest, for a long time I, as well as other high-ranked players, have considered the Marshal to be a bit underrated. It only costs 1,100 credits and could be a good round 2 buy if you win the first round, as it will one-shot enemies without armor, and you can take it into the third round against rifle and armored opponents by looking for a one-shot headshot with it. However, enough time has passed now, and it's clear that for the most part, that's really the only situation it's worth buying the Marshal for. Also, again, consider the Stinger, which, just an insanely powerful weapon, is 100 credits cheaper. Additionally, if you're going for the Marshal because you want to fill the operator role later on, well, it's probably just best to save your money instead of buying the Marshal in the first place so you can buy the operator earlier. I think in the right hands, the Marshal can be a B tier weapon, but for the average player, it's definitely C tier. It could definitely use some buffs, maybe in the form of it costing 100 credits less, maybe increase the fire rate ever so slightly so it actually gives it a chance against automatic weapons under certain conditions. I don't know though, let me know what you guys think. Do you think the Marshal needs a buff? If so, what would you change? Let us know in the comment section below. Alright, moving on to the B tier, starting at the bottom where we have the Ghost. Now, I know this is a bit controversial and some of you will be surprised by this and think the Ghost is at least an A tier weapon, and we would completely agree with you if this was a few months ago. However, the pistol meta has changed drastically. On pistol round, way more players are opting into either the classic pistol with light armor and utility, or going with the Frenzy with utility or Frenzy with light armor. And this is for several different reasons. Firstly, when you run the numbers, they actually have a lower time to kill than the Ghost, with one exception if you land a headshot with the Ghost with your first bullet. But let's be honest, if pro players are shifting off the Ghost despite having one-shot headshot potential, well then the average player who doesn't have godlike aim should probably be doing the same. Another issue with the Ghost right now is that outside of pistol round, it's a terrible eco purchase. You're much better off either sitting on a classic pistol and full saving, or if you want to go for an eco buy, then just spend a few more credits for a Sheriff, Bucky, or Stinger. A Essentially, it's falling out of the pistol round meta, while it doesn't really have a place as a eco round purchase either, and that's why it's at the bottom of the B tier. Next up in the B tier, we have the Ares, and here's the thing about the Ares, it's not necessarily bad, it's just a gun that fills a very niche role as it's the cheapest automatic high penetration weapon that you can buy. However, outside of it having high wall penetration, when you compare it to other 1600 credit weapons, it's just worse overall. The Spectre will give you a faster time to kill outside of wall banging, of course, same with the Judge. Sure, if you're playing Sova or you're just on Ascent and you're going for a specific wallbang strategy, then this weapon can jump up to an A tier pick, but otherwise it's more of a C tier weapon, and that's why we placed it in the middle at B tier. Next up in the B tier, we have the Bucky. The Bucky is a pretty underrated weapon right now, and a lot of players think it's weaker than it actually is. Don't get me wrong, it's not overpowered or super strong or anything, but it's definitely not a weak weapon either. I think the biggest issue that it has right now is at 900 credits, it's just being overshadowed by the 1000 credit Stinger. I mean, why buy a Bucky over a Stinger? However, if you can imagine a world where the Stinger doesn't exist or is just weaker, then what would compete with a Bucky at this price point? Maybe a Sheriff at 800 credits, but that weapon fills a much different role. Every other weapon would come in at 1600 credits, such as the Spectre, which is a much more expensive purchase. So yeah, the Bucky is definitely a solid pickup, but it's currently just completely overshadowed by the Stinger at its price point, so expect once the Stinger gets nerfed for the Bucky to increase in power level. And finally, at the top of the B tier, we have the Bulldog. Now this is definitely a close one. The Bulldog is either a top B tier weapon or a bottom A tier weapon. It's just a solid pickup overall, it's kind of the jack of all trades, master of none. At 2100 credits, it is pretty expensive, but still far enough from the 2900 rifles that there will be spots where buying it makes sense instead of saving or going for a cheaper eco buy. It doesn't exactly excel at close range fights or long range fights, but it's not weak at them either. It's just overall a well-rounded gun that keeps you versatile. For the most part, we're seeing it purchased as a force buy when the rest of your team is going rifle and full armor, and you can't afford this, so you go for the Bulldog full armor instead. One of the biggest things that it has going for it is its right-click mode, where you shoot a burst of full bullets in a very tight pattern. Only 2 of those bullets need to hit the head in order for you to kill an enemy at every single range. Essentially, if you have to force buy to keep up with your teammates, well, then the Bulldog is not a bad choice at all. It's not a weak option, but it's not necessarily the strongest choice either. Alright, jumping up, we now have the A tier, and coming in at the bottom of it is the Classic Pistol. Now, the Classic Pistol would have been in the S tier or even overpowered prior to the patch 2.0 nerfs. These nerfs increase the jumping in accuracy, increase the input queue to nerf the left click into right click combo, and a massive recoil and spread increase when spamming the right click. Basically, jump right clicking is weaker at longer ranges and spamming the right click is weaker. However, besides that, the rest of its power remains completely the same. So you can still one-shot enemies up close with the right click, it's still a 2-shot headshot against armored targets at 30 meters or less, and most importantly, it's completely free. I would say that until the Classic Pistol becomes a significantly weaker purchase than the Shorty at 200 credits or Ghost at 500 credits, it will always be at least B tier due to it being free every single round. Next up in the A tier, we have the Sheriff. The Sheriff isn't seeing a ton of action currently, but I would argue a lot of the more eco weapons haven't seen a lot of action due to them being completely overshadowed by the Stinger's power level. However, again, imagine a world where the Stinger doesn't exist or it's nerfed. Suddenly we begin to see the strength of the Sheriff. It's only 800 credits, offers 1-shot headshot potential against all targets under 30 meters, and is a 3-shot body shot kill against armored targets at all ranges. That's extremely versatile and for a very low price point. Most eco weapons are either designed to be long range or short range. There's pretty much no weapons at such a low price point that are versatile. The Sheriff is kind of the eco buy equivalent of the Bulldog. If someone buys a Sheriff on an eco round, that would never be considered a bad choice. It's one of the stronger options, but in the current meta, it wouldn't be considered the strongest choice either, as you'll find out why shortly. And finishing off at the top of the A tier is the Spectre. Now, the Spectre is in a very strange spot given that the Stinger is basically just a better version of it for cheaper, but again, you can make the Stinger comparison to literally every weapon in the game right now, it's just that powerful. However, besides the Stinger, if you need a cheap automatic weapon to compete with riflers, then the Spectre will be one of your best bets. It offers a lower time to kill than the Bulldog, Guardian, and Ares in close ranges. It's also one of the easier automatic weapons to control in terms of recoil and spray. Currently, the Spectre is the go-to purchase in pro play as the second round purchase for the team that won the first round. What this allows them to do is guarantee the second round win, while then giving them a weapon that helps them compete with the incoming rifles on round 3. So yeah, overall, the Spectre is a solid pick and deserving of a spot in the A tier. Alright, now we're getting into the truly powerful territory, S tier. And at the bottom of the S tier, we have the Odin. Here's the thing about the Odin, it's only 300 credits more expensive than a rifle, while being high penetration instead of medium, meaning you can wallbang like crazy, which is why it's so often paired with Sova in his recon bolts. The real strength though is its high fire rate of 15.6 rounds a second when scoped in, while also having laser-like accuracy. It's this combination of a super high fire rate, giving it a low time to kill, combined with the easy to control spray and recoil, making it insanely effective in lower ranks where players won't land as many headshots. In fact, the lower in the ranks you go, the higher I would place the Odin on the tier list, eventually considering it overpowered in the Iron to Bronze ranks. And next up in the S tier, we have the Vandal. The Vandal originally had some issues prior to its buffs on patch 1.07, with the Phantom clearly just being the better purchase in all situations. However, since those buffs, we've seen a lot more pros pick up the Vandal over the Phantom. That being said though, the Phantom still is picked more often by the pros, but it's relatively close now, like 60% Phantom, 40% Vandal. At the same time, picking the Vandal over the Phantom now actually makes sense in a lot more specific scenarios. For example, if you're planning to attack long sightlines like C long on Haven or B long on Bind or mid on Ascent, then the Vandal is clearly the superior purchase than the Phantom with its one-shot headshot at all ranges. Despite this unique strength though, the Phantom is still coming in a spot higher in the S tier. To put it simply, the Phantom is just more versatile and easier to use and control. This makes it a fantastic option for the majority of the player base, since obviously they aren't pro, and so they haven't mastered their aim or recoil control, and the Phantom can just be a lot more forgiving. For example, I would always recommend if you're gold or below, just go with the Phantom only as your rifle and focus on improving with it. With a faster fire rate than the Vandal, you have a lower time to kill at medium to close ranges where the majority of fights take place. You have that bigger magazine size so you don't have to reload as much, but overall it's the laser-like accuracy and easy to control spray that makes it better than the Vandal. Most players won't be consistently one-tapping enemies in the head, and so the Phantom will always give them that bigger advantage when it comes to a spray-down fight. Alright, and lastly at the top of the S tier we have the Operator. There is a reason why this one-shot cannon is 5,000 credits, it's insanely powerful, and there's just simply no other weapon that can fill its role. There are so many situations in a game where having an Operator can just turn the game around, secure the win, and simply crush riflers. The Operator would have easily made it to the Overpowered tier prior to the nerfs it received on patch 1.09. However, despite those nerfs, it still remains at the top of the S tier with one exception if you're playing Jett. If you're playing Jett, the Operator immediately ascends to the Overpowered tier. Her dash ability gives you an insane amount of safety after you take a shot, your updraft gives you off angles you can hold, and her ultimate gives you a way to save up for the Operator without just having to run around with a classic pistol. Now, with the S tier out of the way, we can move on to our final category, the Overpowered tier. Weapons in this tier are not only what we consider to be the strongest in the game right now, but also the ones most deserving of some sort of nerf, and ones that you can expect to be nerfed at some point in the near future. And at the bottom of this Overpowered tier, we have the Frenzy. This may come as a surprise to some of you, but the Frenzy is a big trend right now in pro play and high-ranked solo queue. And if you don't believe us, just consider how the Frenzy has replaced so many other weapons as the go-to purchase in a variety of different scenarios. Once upon a time, if you needed a cheap eco buy, the Shorty was the gun of choice, now it's the Frenzy. If you wanted something a bit more versatile, albeit more expensive, you'd go with the Sheriff. Now for 400 credits cheaper, you just opt for the Frenzy. On pistol round, you would only pick between the classic pistol light armor and utility, or ghost and utility. Now that's changed, it's often the classic pistol setup, or a Frenzy with utility or Frenzy light armor no utility. I mean, even if you're considering more expensive 1600 automatic gun purchases like a Spectre or Ares, most high-ranked players just save and buy a 400 credit Frenzy instead. And here's what you need to understand about the Frenzy. It's insanely accurate when it comes to running and gunning. In fact, spoiler alert, the Frenzy pretty much has all of the strengths as one of the only other weapons we haven't gone over yet, the Stinger. Often, if you're considering saving or half buying, going for a more economic purchase, in the current meta, you're either opting into a Stinger and full armor, or just a Frenzy with no armor. Well, that is, unless you're purchasing the next weapon in the Overpowered tier, the Judge. If you're surprised to find the Judge in the Overpowered tier, your name may be Patrick, as you've probably been living under a rock. The amount of Reddit posts that have gone viral of players in different regions hitting Radiant while only purchasing a Judge is getting to be ridiculous. The fact that you can go Judge only and hit Radiant consistently with a high win rate and it's only 1600 credits is insane. Not only is the low price point a huge strength, but it's also just easier to land your shots and get a kill than it is with a rifle. There's no spray or recoil control, no having to aim perfectly at the head. With the Judge, you look to play close angles, aim center of mass, and you're good to go. And all of this comes with one huge strength, the fact that you can be running and jumping while you're doing this, making you extremely hard to hit for the enemy. If you're someone who hasn't used the Judge a lot, I highly recommend you start experimenting with it in your own games. It's fantastic as a second round buy after you won the first round, as you can then take it into the third round against the riflers, just make sure you're playing a close angle like Hookah on Bind. At the same time, it functions as a good force buy if you need to match the rifle buys of your teammates, or it can be a great save round purchase, assuming you'll still have 3,900 credits minimum next round to go rifle and armor if you lose. In fact, the judge would have made the top of the entire tier list if it wasn't for an even cheaper weapon that's more powerful and even more versatile. Taking the #1 spot on the list is the Stinger. My god, what is there not to praise about the Stinger? It excels in literally every metric you could possibly evaluate. It has the fastest fire rate in the game, even faster than a scoped in Odin at 18 rounds a second. It pretty much has no damage drop-off, so you can just unload clips at 20 or 30 meters and kill fully armored opponents in no time at all. And if you find yourself having to fight at even further ranges, well, you have the alternate fire mode where you shoot a fairly accurate 4-bullet burst. And you can get all of this for the low price of 1,000 credits. Essentially, what this means is if you just ran the numbers, the Stinger would look insanely overpowered on paper. However, in an actual game, it ends up being even more powerful due to its insane running accuracy. You honestly don't want to be standing still and trying to aim at heads. If you're at around 10 to 15 meters, you're better off just holding that W key, aiming at the largest target, the body, and holding down left click. In fact, if you're past 15 meters and so you don't want to run, you often just want to aim for the body anyways, as the insane fire rate and bullet spread means you'll kill them in milliseconds with body shots or just stray headshots. The Stinger is insanely overpowered right now, and the entire high-ranked and pro community were definitely surprised there were no nerfs to it on patch 2.0. Fair warning though, I do not expect the Stinger to stick around at this power level for very much longer. Nerfs are definitely incoming. With that being said, what nerfs would you give the Stinger? Let us know in the comment section below as we read all the comments and would love to hear your thoughts. And remember, if you're someone who is serious about improving, want to win more gunfights and get the rank you've always wanted, then check out our hyper improvement system at SkillCapped.com, link in the description below. Otherwise, you know the deal. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to keep up with the meta and get more premium guides with one goal in mind, helping you become a better player. We here at SkillCapped want to thank you for watching until the end, and we'll catch you in the next one.